out there. It's pretty cool to see a 70-year-old plant transform into a new competitive industrial manufacturing, but also very innovative to be on IUPUI's campus and see some of the neat things they're doing. So with that, Chancellor Paydar, a few welcoming comments.
Well, good afternoon. On behalf of IUPUI, I want to welcome to this wonderful campus. Delighted that you're here so that we could take this opportunity, and thank you for your service to our state and for your support of higher education, and especially Indiana University and IUPUI. Today you gave me the opportunity during lunchtime to make a quick presentation about IUPUI and let you know that we have about 30,000 students and roughly 7,000 students graduate. But what we are really proud of is that 93% of our students undergraduate come from state of Indiana, and almost the same percentage stays in state of Indiana. So we are a state university that we're using your resources very wisely and making sure that the benefit of that goes back to the state. Again, thank you for your support and welcome to our campus, and have a wonderful meeting here today.
Thank you. Meeting will officially come to order. I'd like to go around for the table for introduction so people know who we are out there on the interweb. I'm State Representative Tim Brown from Crawfordsville, Chairman of the State Budget Committee until June 30th, I hope, or we'll find out. Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. So we'll start over here.
My name is Jessica Harmon, and I'm with the Fiscal Office and Legislative Services Agency.
Krista Rivera, I'm a Senate Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Alicia Napsiger, House Republican Fiscal Analyst.
Bob Cherry, State Representative from Greenfield, alternate on the Budget Committee.
I'm Ben Tooley. I'm Director of Fiscal Policy for the House Republican Caucus.
Jason Dudich, State Budget Director for Governor Holcomb.
Senator Luke Kenley from Noblesville, member of the State Budget Committee.
David Reynolds, Fiscal Analyst, Senate Majority Caucus.
Susan Preble, Fiscal Analyst for the Senate Democrat Caucus.
Karen Talion, Senate Democrat Delegate to the Budget Committee.
State Senator Greg Taylor, Senate Democrat alternate to the Budget Committee.
Eric Gonzalez, House Democrat Fiscal Analyst.
Zach Jackson, Deputy Budget Director.
Deanna Owari, Deputy Budget Director with the State Budget Agency.
Thank you all for your attendance today and for your attendance as we went around to different places in the state. You have before us a proposed agenda for the Budget Committee. I want to just say that, Senator Mishler, you want to enter, snuck in behind me. Senator Mishler from up at Bremen, Indiana is here also. Thank you, Clyde. There have been some inquiries about I-69 and the Martinsville to Bloomington project. The lawyers of the Finance Authority are still in negotiations and find that negotiations may be compromised or tilted one way or the other if there are statements made concerning what is happening definitively right now. I think if you have questions about the I-69 projects, please submit them in writing, and we'll try and get them to Dan and IFA for our next meeting. Hopefully negotiations will be finalized. If you want to have a conversation with IFA and Dan Hughey, we'll try and make that happen if Terry or Greg, since they aren't here today. I know Senator Talion reached out, and Dan has called and talked to Senator Talion, but hopefully just communication a little bit will be the best thing. But if there are specific things about, what's being reported on, submit those questions in writing so that we can have them for the next meeting. With that, we have a proposed agenda in front of us. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? The agenda is laid on the table. First order of business is the minutes of the April 12th meeting. They have been distributed to the members. Any additions or corrections to the minutes of April 12th? I'm sorry, not April 12th, not August. Did I say August? I want summer to be over with already. April 12th. Do I have a motion? It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2017. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. With that, we will go into the agency projects and go through our agenda and then the review items. First is Department of Revenue, Mr. Vance and Mr. Baker. The podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ed Vance. I'm the CFO for the Department of Revenue. I'm also joined by Glenn Baker, who's our Chief Modernization Officer and Project Manager for the ITS Modernization Project. I want to say to you that our Commissioner, Adam Crump, sends his best regards. He wanted to be here today. He's actually traveling on business out in Seattle at a tax conference out there, so I can assure you that he'd much rather be here than out at the tax conference in Seattle. But we want to thank you very much for this opportunity to present our request today. We realize that it's unconventional to request a funding of a future appropriation, which is our situation today. But this is a large-scale, major project that has been significantly underway for quite some time now. So we thought that we needed to come before the committee sooner rather than later, because we want to make sure that we can encumber funds and pay vendors on a timely basis to keep the project moving forward smoothly as it is today. So our request today is for funding of our fiscal year 18 appropriation, which is $16.1 million. And now I'm going to have Glenn come up and tell you a little bit about the project, give you an overview of it. He'll give you a sense of the timeline, as well as what has been accomplished to date and some budget details.
Thank you, CFO Vance. For the record, I'm Glenn Baker, the Chief Modernization Officer for the Department of Revenue. Mr. Chairman, committee members, I want to echo Mr. Vance's appreciation for the opportunity to present here today. I think many of you know that the Department of Revenue is very excited to be in a position to move aggressively in fiscal year 18 to modernize and transform our processes and our technologies with the addition of an integrated tax system. So we are very well positioned coming out of 2017 because of all of the hard work and dedication from every member of the Department of Revenue to date. So as for the go-forward plan, in the first half of fiscal year 2018, we expect to publish an RFP, evaluate the proposals, and select an integrated tax system and implementation service provider for that large system. We also will launch internal services, which will include many services required for us to be prepared to implement in the second half of fiscal year 2018. Things like data cleansing, data conversion efforts, et cetera. We'll also begin building the full internal Department of Revenue implementation team, which will mean staff augmentation for many areas of the department heading into the second half of next year. And then lastly, we will develop the initial multi-year, multi-phase implementation plan and a detailed implementation plan for the first phase. Near the middle of fiscal year 2018, we will procure the ITS solution, the integrated tax system, and the implementation services, including going to contract. We will also procure additional services that we will need, including independent verification and validation, as well as organizational change management. We will continue building the team for the phase 1 implementation once we understand exactly what the approach and what the solution will be. We also will work with IoT to procure all of the hardware and the infrastructure to run the new solution. And we will fully launch the implementation of this new system all by the third quarter of fiscal year 18. We've had a very aggressive plan this year. We've stayed on that plan. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but we feel we're in great shape to achieve all of those goals in fiscal year 18. Now, turning to the budget, as you can see from the presentation or from the outline you were given, the largest investment of state funds for fiscal year 2018 will be for external services. That includes evaluation and selection services, the new ITS system, the implementation services for the new integrated tax system, the additional implementation services that I mentioned, as well as all the staff augmentation. All of that falls into external services. We also, as you can see, have $800,000 allocated to internal services, which will mainly go to IoT, the technology department, for the infrastructure and the support services. Okay? And with that, I will turn it back over to CFO Vance.
Thank you, Glenn. We're happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Senator Kenley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thinking globally about the last big technology change we made, which was the Bureau of Motor Vehicles redoing everything they needed to do, and that was successful in the end, but there was a lot of difficulty with the interaction with the public, and what the public, in particular detailed instances, thought they were having trouble with different elements of what we were implementing, and that's pretty typical of IT-type system changes. So I hope you all have budgeted some money, and I hope you all will set aside some plans to try to anticipate in advance maybe what you need to do to educate the public, maybe the accounting community, and then also to have some kind of a task force that will be available to troubleshoot on behalf of the public with the state, so that we can avoid the kind of complications that we saw at that time. And I'm sure you've thought of all those things and have a good plan in place, but it just sitting here looking at $32 million, I think it's important to us that we have as smooth a relationship with the public in this implementation as possible.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I would add is we have been meeting with the tax practitioners, and we plan to meet with individual taxpayers, and we are asking them to set aside time through every aspect of this project, through the evaluation and through the implementation, to be very involved. There's no better testers of the new technology than those groups.
Thank you.
I think my question would follow up with that. I mean, 6 months, you said mid-18, fiscal year 18, you'd be ready for some of this application. That's the starting of the filing of tax returns, you know, in calendar year 2018. And so you anticipate no hitch with filing of tax returns, no delay to when those tax returns can be filed?
Yeah, I'm sorry, let me clarify. We will launch the project to begin implementing, which would be in early calendar year 2018.
Okay, so
the implementations, you can almost guarantee, will never be planned for January or the first quarter.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. I guess I heard that. And then also, I think the other thing is IoT, or is it going to be DOR that's going to be doing some testing of security firewalls and making, or will it be the contractor that will look at firewalls for security and things of those nature as they change over time?
That's a great question. Security is actually our #1 priority from an infrastructure standpoint. IoT will be our security provider, but IoT working with ITD, our Internal Department of Revenue Technology Department, will ensure that the solution as well as the infrastructure meets all of the strict security requirements that we have.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Smith. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Natural Resources. DNR, I believe, has 4 projects on today's agenda. The first of which is State Park cabin renovations and updates. The Division of State Parks is requesting $2.6 million for cabin renovations and updates at 4 properties. Those are Brown County, Turkey Run, Pokagon, and Fort Harrison. Approximately 100 cabins will receive much-needed maintenance to include roof replacement, HVAC repair, flooring, and plumbing. Cabin rental generates over $2 million in revenue annually within DNR, and Brown County alone generates $1.3 million.
Question for Mr. Smith. Thank you. Next.
Project number 2 is Dune State Park Trail 2 Boardwalk. The Division of State Parks is requesting approximately $400,000 to replace the Trail 2 Boardwalk at Dune State Park. The boardwalk was constructed in 1985 with treated lumber. It is nearly 1/2 mile in length and includes a wetland portion close to the nature preserve. Over the last 30 years, the boardwalk has slowly deteriorated due to high water table, resulting in its closure about 3 years ago. The proposed boardwalk frame will be made of galvanized steel and treated yellow pine decking. It will be fabricated and ADA compliant. It will also have adjustable legs, which will allow the boardwalk to be well above the water level. It comes with a 100-year material guaranteed warranty on the frame and a 25-year warranty for the decking and treated lumber. Dune State Park is our most profitable park, having a 200% revenue versus expense ratio.
Who's going to be around to collect on the guarantee? Just
Yeah, no.
any further questions?
Project number 3, Kankakee Fish and Wildlife Area Pole Barn. The Division of Fish and Wildlife is requesting approximately $54,000 to match $160,000 of federal funds to build a 60 by 100 foot pole barn at Kankakee Fish and Wildlife Area in LaPorte County. This building will be post-frame structure with steel siding and a metal roof. The proposed building will meet all codes for a Class 1 storage building. Due to the extreme wind loads in the area, along with seismic considerations because of the proximity of the fault line, a thickened concrete slab and additional wind supports must be installed. There will be 3 overhead doors and 2 steel walk entrance doors. A 200 amp electrical panel will be installed, including 250 watt interior light fixtures. 4 exterior wall pack lights will be installed as well. The building will house and protect tractors, front-end loaders, landscaping equipment, trucks, and mowers.
Questions? So the size of the new building will be the same, or will it be a bigger building?
It's a much bigger building, yes.
Much bigger? Okay. Do we know approximately the size of the new building?
It was 20, Greg, 200?
The existing chicken coop, as they call it on site, is somewhere in the 30 by 40.
30 by 50, is that what you said, Greg?
40.
30 by 40.
Okay.
The fourth project
Go ahead.
is we want to replace refrigeration and freezer at the Abe Martin Lodge. The Division of State Parks is requesting $266,000 to replace a walk-in refrigerator and walk-in freezer, as well as other kitchen improvements. The equipment is approximately 20 years old. Abe Martin Lodge food and beverage sales was $1.2 million in 2016. We expect the return on this investment to be around 8 years.
Senator Taylor.
I was just wondering, what happens to the old equipment that you take out of there?
I don't know if we're trading it in, Greg, or what are we allowing the vendor to give us some recoup on that, or what? Yeah. Trying to get some discount, yeah.
Do you have local vendors down there who can actually supply this equipment that you're replacing? So are you using Indiana? I'm wondering about the people who you're gonna buy the ovens from and all the other stuff.
I mean, we certainly have Indiana preference on all that stuff. We'll go through the Department of Administration for the bids.
Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the state hospitals. Mr. Babb.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Jeff Babb, I'm Plant Operations Director for DMHA. I think I just set off the computer. First project is for Madison State Hospital. In 2016, DMHA did a study to determine the usefulness of security cameras at our state-operated facilities. We determined there was a very big need for that. Unfortunately, Madison only had 11 cameras available. And part of this project is to provide all the backbone infrastructure plus the cameras to provide the security for the patients and the staff.
Next.
Second project is for Richmond State Hospital. Sometime in the early 80s, they replaced steam lines, took them out of the tunnels and buried them directly in steel casings in the ground. The steam line ruptured somewhere in the steel casing, and the public works contractor kept digging and digging and digging until we ended up with a $300,000 project.
Okay. Question?
Sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry, who dug where?
It was a contractor hired by the Department of Public Works. There was a steam leak. Public Works hired a contractor, and when the contractor started digging, there was no way to determine where this leak was. It started out as a small project and just kept escalating while they kept trying to locate this leak. They put no vents where we could determine where the leak was.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought someone that was working on a project damaged the steam line and caused the leak, so this was a, it was a leak.
It was a rupture of the steam line during the winter.
And so the Department of Public Works hired a contractor to come in and examine where the leak was, but they didn't know where it was, so started digging
It
until
started
they
out as
found
an
it.
emergency repair, and by the time it was most of the hospital, the line was so deteriorated it just kept crumbling as they kept digging.
Okay, so the line itself was in a condition where, as the digging occurred, it continued to deteriorate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Further questions? Thank you. Next.
The last project is for, to replace the sprinkler system in Building 417 on Richmond State Hospital. I believe the facility has a grant to house a drug alcohol treatment program in this building. The sprinkler line is beyond the point of repair and needs complete replacement.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we go to the Indiana Veterans Home, Mr. Kreider and Mr. Conwell.
Hello, my name is Dave Conwell. I'm the maintenance supervisor at the Indiana Veterans Home. With me today is Doug Kreider, our CFO. The Indiana Veterans Home is requesting funds of $225,000 for a pile flooring project. The Indiana Veterans Home requests funding to replace 32,100 square feet of Fritz tile flooring that was installed in 1972 on the second floors of the Pile building. These floors are primarily used for patient care and resident living. Many of the residents on this floor suffer from dementia and other forms of brain disease. The current Fritz flooring can confuse residents by creating an appearance on the floor such as pennies or pools of water, which create them to bend over and have falls, which poses a serious health risk. Currently, the current tile attributes to 40 to 45% of the falls on the Pile units. Residents' falls over the past year has cost thousands of dollars due to trips to the ER. Injuries include multiple broken hips, ribs, and lacerations to the head. The current Fritz tile is original to the Pile building, being 45 years old. Vendors and suppliers can't even match the tile. And our Indiana State Department of Health surveyors has given us verbal kind of notice telling us that if we don't upgrade and get our buildings back to a home-like environment, we could receive life safety tags, quality of life, dignity, safe, clean, adequate, and comfortable lighting to our resident rooms, in which could affect our admissions and our 5-star rating at the Indiana Veterans Home.
Any questions? You look like you have one. You're closer. Senator Talion.
Sorry to be the one to do this, but really, is the rest of this floor in otherwise good shape?
No, the floor, I actually brought sample pieces. The problem with the flooring is it looks like it's got rocks and pebbles, so when the high gloss of it, it portrays an image to people with dementia that there's a rock or a pebble on the floor, so then they try to pick things up. So just our highest fall month was in May, where we had 39 patients fall trying to reach down and pick items up off of the floor.
Okay. All right. But the flooring is in otherwise good shape, it's just what's on there?
It's been patched in many places. I have photos along with me because we can't match it, where water has got under it from maybe a toilet leak or something of that nature, and the floor being 45-year-old is starting to crumble in areas and crack. So we've replaced it, but the tile we replace it with is a lighter color, so we have, you walk down a hallway or in a resident room, and you actually see different shades of tiles, which is also confusing to residents, which is a dignity concern for when families come in, they look at our flooring and they're like, wow, this is just pieced together, you know, and patched in so many different areas.
All right, and I guess I get the problem, but this pattern didn't seem to cause this problem for the last 40 years, right?
Patients were actually moved from one Mitchell building and Mack building to the Pile building because we've done renovations in our MacArthur building.
Okay.
Further question? Yes, go ahead, Director Duda.
This may be a question for Doug. The funding on this, the $225,000 coming out of the Vets Home construction, the revenue for that is actually is a portion of the per diem that the Vets Home receives from the federal government that's set aside in the construction account to improve and maintain the facility. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is federal dollars coming in that must be set aside to improve the building. So
Must be
no
set-
general fund dollars.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
VA
you.
requirement, that money must be set aside and used for improvement on the building.
Thank you very much.
Further question? Thank you. Thank you. Next is Department of Corrections, Mr. Orm.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kevin Orm. I'm the Executive Director of Construction Services Division of the Indiana Department of Correction. We have 3 projects today for your consideration. The first project is the high voltage modernization of the Indiana State Prison for $360,000. It's been my privilege to take the committee on tours of the Indiana State Prison on a couple occasions. It's a very unique facility, started during the Lincoln administration. It survives today as, I think, one of the best kept prisons, best maintained prisons of that era left in the country. Very functional. We have no intentions of closing the facility anytime soon. It serves our needs very well. When they electrified, when they brought electricity into the prison in the 1920s, they followed the route of the time of putting a steam-powered plant in the center of the prison. In the 1970s, they upgraded all of that electrical system, went back in and put a high voltage switchgear in the same location as where the original steam-powered generating plant had been, and that 1970s switchgear remains today. That defeats the modern design of all of our modern correctional facilities, where you actually have high voltage switchgear outside of the facility and run the high voltage into the facility to run the different buildings. There's a couple reasons for that. One, the ease of working on it. Two, it's not susceptible to damage by the offenders in the event of a disturbance. This switchgear is at the end of its useful life. 1970s era switchgear, this in particular, is very difficult to get parts for. There's just a couple remaining sources, actually one of them in a desert in the middle of California, that you can still get parts for this equipment. If we're going to modernize it, as we went through project development, we looked at changing it from that central inside the prison distribution grid to an outside the prison distribution grid, bringing it in. The prices were roughly equal. We saved money on construction by doing the construction work in the following phases of the project outside and bringing it in and not having to do the work inside the prison. So this project replaces all that switchgear. It's the first phase of 6 phases that we'll bring to the committee over the next couple biennia. Each phase of that is around $300,000. It's staged not only for the funding aspect, but it's staged because of the logical flow of the work.
Questions? You say there'll be 6 phases to it. What's the timeline?
Over the next 2 biennia, sir, unless we have some projects that, some roofing projects or some other kind of projects that come in way under budget that will let us fund it earlier. The urgency is the first phase of the project. The other phases are out of convenience of the modernization because I'll use the parts from the first phase to supplement the lifespan of the remaining equipment throughout the project.
Okay, thank you. Further question? Thank you. Next.
Our next project is the restoration of the gymnasium building of the Pendleton Correctional Facility. Very unique structure. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a 15,000 square foot 1950s era Quonset hut. In some era, I'm quite sure they designed that same building to park airplanes in for NORAD. They particularly started selling those buildings as structures for institutions and various uses. This one serves quite well in that role. Indoor basketball courts, gymnasium, restrooms, shower facility. It's an alternate house unit. If we would ever have heat fail at that facility, we can take the offenders into the gym and keep them there. We looked at this project from a number of different angles. The funding request today is for $1.3 million for the complete restoration. For replacement, we're in the $5 million range. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this, with the current structure, other than it has a bad exterior metal skin on it. This project pays to take the metal skin off of it, sandblast, aggregate blast the supporting steel structure, coat it, and put a new skin back on it, and it should last another 60 or 70 years with a good, cost-effective renovation.
Questions? Thank you. Go ahead, next.
My last project, sir, is I think I've actually taken a few of you on a tour of this facility. In Westville, Indiana, we have what originally was designed as the Maximum Control Complex. It is one of two correctional facilities in the state of Indiana where we keep the worst of the worst, not necessarily the worst offenses, but the offenders that have actually proven themselves to be the most dangerous to handle to the staff, to the correctional staff that manage them every day. The very unique structures. The offenders come out of their cell one time a day. They usually come out with under the security of 2 staff members, supported with large retention straps in between them, so they can't actually assault our staff. The chief security mechanism behind this is the ability to control the doors. So the staff members never have to take their hands off the offenders as they're taking them through the building to showers or recreation. Those doors cycle in that building hundreds of times each day. Over the last 25 years, they've cycled hundreds of thousands of times. The steel, the mechanism, the drive units have become obsolete and are simply worn out. The building in itself is a lobed structure, one central core surrounded by 4 lobes. Over the next 4 years, it is our intention to bring to you subsequent projects to do each of the pods, or the lobes, if you will. This project, for $633,000, replaces all the locking devices in the central core of that complex and then leads the way to the subsequent renovations. There's no way in the DOC today that we can take that many cells offline at one time to do a full-scale renovation. So once again, just as the electrical project I talked about earlier, this has to be sequenced to meet the offender load as we shift those offenders to a facility in southern Indiana to watch over them. We're working with the Indiana Finance Authority. We have standardized the cell doors in this environment to save money from one end of Indiana to the other. We're installing the same cell doors as the Finance Authority is at Miami, or we're putting in at Putnamville, and this provides new controls, devices, drives, and doors and locking devices in the first of this unit. Each subsequent project, this request is $633,000. Each subsequent request of the lobed units, of the pod units, will be about $750,000, and that's part of our master plan going forward for our capital expenses, sir.
Senator Tallien.
Kevin, on these projects like this that involve renovations or changes, do you do this work in-house? Do you use prison labor? Do you outsource this? Who does this?
I prefer you not tell this to my counterpart in Ohio, who her and I have diverging opinions on how to run a project like this. You pay us to run these prisons, ma'am. There's no better designer of this kind of project in Indiana than my working group. We don't pay a designer. We hire contractors to come in and do the installation. I do the design. My group knows what works. You pay us to know what works. So we stay up on modern correctional, modern locking devices across the country. This is a niche market, but it's a big dollar expense all across the country. So my contention is, if I could find a designer that knew what my group does, everyone in my group has a minimum of 25 years working behind a fence or a wall. Each one of us do. If I could find a designer that could do as well as my group, I might be tempted to hire some of it out, but we do all this ourselves, all this design. The installation is done by some contractors that we hire, that we work with every day, and then we manage the project from beginning to end. It's very unique. Not all my counterparts, in fact, most of my counterparts across the country absolutely disagree with that theory. They want to hire it out. I choose to keep control over the workmanship, the quality. I want to be, if my name's going to be on a project that's protecting those correctional officers when they take this combative offender out, I want to control the quality. This kind of project allows me to do that.
Thank you.
Senator Taylor.
Are any of these facilities with a private contractor?
None of these are, sir. No, these are all state-owned facilities. Private contracted facilities, the two we have, One specifically is under the auspices of the Indiana Finance Authority, and one is a small project with actually no capital, a small correctional facility that has no capital projects pending at all.
Further questions?
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Next, Indiana Department of Transportation, Mr. Hargis.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Hargis. I'm the Operations Analyst for INDOT's Office of Facility Management. Today, for your consideration, the Indiana Department of Transportation would like to formally request $250,000 for the construction of the Winchester Maintenance Unit wash bay. The Winchester Maintenance Unit currently does not have a wash bay on site, and the lack of this type of structure creates several deficiencies that INDOT staff must address for safety, environmental, and operational reasons. First, the maintenance staff currently washes trucks and equipment outside year-round in a variety of inclement weather. And as a result, and as you can imagine, this greatly increases the likelihood of slip and fall accidents during snow and ice months. So employee safety is a concern. Secondly, the lack of a contained wash bay can lead to significant stormwater runoff of brine-laden wash water. And the lack of an oil water separator on site can lead to oil and grease contamination issues both on-site and off-site. And finally, washing outside creates operational inefficiencies by increasing process times, which is especially important during a snow fight, which can affect our service times. And if we go without washing, it can lead to the reduction of the lifespan of our fleet and equipment investments. So again, INDOT is formally requesting $250,000 for the construction of the Winchester Maintenance Unit wash bay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the agency projects. We'll next go to the review items and start with the Southeast Project, I-65, Mr. Stark and Ms. Carlin.
Good afternoon. My name's Jim Stark. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Innovative Project Delivery from INDOT. I'm here with Whitney Carlin to go over our I-65 Southeast project. The purpose for us being here today, and I'll go through that, and then I'll turn it over to Whitney for the rest of the program, is that this is a project where we use our design, build, best value contract procedure under our NDOT P3 statute. Using that statute, we presented information about the project to the Budget Committee in December of 16 prior to issuing our final RFP. The statute requires that NDOT presents the results of its evaluation and selection of the preferred proposer to the Budget Committee and the Governor prior to executing the contract. And one last thing I want to point out to the committee is that there's no financing involved with this project. The project will be funded by the state and federal dollars from existing NDOT appropriations. It's the statute that we follow that we're required to be here to give you our results. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Carlin to give you the results of the project overview.
Good afternoon. I'm Whitney Carlin. I'm the project manager with the Seymour District. Okay. Here we go. So we've been calling this a Southeast Indiana project. It is it's approximately 14.25 miles in both Bartholomew and Jackson counties. It includes pavement replacement and rehabilitation of I-65 for the northbound and southbound travel lanes from US 50 to State Road 58. We are adding a travel lane in the median shoulder and widening the outside shoulder in both directions. And we're upgrading and extending the service life of bridges and small structures in the same corridor. The project budget is $143 million. It's anticipated to take 2.5 construction seasons, starting in the late summer of 2017. There's a project overview map. We started this with the request for qualifications in June of 2016. Then we accepted proposals from 3 teams in April of 2017, and we announced the selected preferred proposal on May 22nd of 2017, and we're closing with the notice to proceed in July 10th of 2017. The shortlisted teams were E&B Paving with their lead engineer of United Consulting Engineers, Milestone Contractors, their lead engineer was Parsons Transportations Group, and Reith Riley Construction Company, and their lead engineer was AECOM. The best value process. A winning proposal is selected on a combined score of scope proposal, technical proposal, and a price proposal score. One of the key things is no communication was either between the scope proposal team, the technical team, or the price team. Then we combine all the scores together with a maximum score of 102.5. We had roughly 30 people helping us evaluate these proposals, and as both NDOT personnel and consultants. The technical proposal was 50 of the 102.5 points. There was 2 elements to the technical proposal score. You had a preliminary project management plan worth 25 points, and the preliminary design build plan was worth 75 points. You can see the formula we used to calculate their technical proposal score. Then we had the scope proposal score. That also is 50 points out of the 102.5. We had 20 scope packages available for each team to select. And you can see the formula there for the scope score. They would just select a scope package, and they were worth so many points. And then if they completed all the scope packages, the team would get 50 points. The price proposal score. This was based on a price below the $143 million full budget for the project scope. The price proposal was only available for teams that had selected the entire scope package. So what we allowed them to do is give us back $500,000 for every yes. they could give us back $500,000, and we would award them a quarter of a point for a maximum of $5 million, or the 2.5 points. And the final step of the determination of the best value is we merge the technical scope and price together, and the combination of scores was determined by the formula you see. Our preliminary preferred proposal is E&B Paving. Again, their lead engineer is United Consulting Engineers. Their major subcontractors are Alton Witzig Engineering and Mort Environmental. The highlights of their proposals: they had an excellent pavement design that added 5 years of the life to the roadway and to create a smoother ride for the motorists. They contain a well-defined strategy to improve safety for workers, the public, including the use of temporary concrete barrier walls during construction. They exceeded the disadvantaged business enterprise goal by $1 million. They will be completing 44 days ahead of the technical requirement, and the preferred proposal received the highest technical proposal score and the total proposal score. Questions?
Senator Talion.
When you do a project like this, normally how many companies will respond? I mean, you list 3 shortlisted people here, but how many applications did you actually have?
In the past, we've had up to 5 of our contractors respond to the RFQs. So 3 to 5 has been the response so far for these.
Okay, and are all of these Indiana companies?
So far, yes, they have been.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Taylor.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for acknowledging and putting the DBE goal in the, but what are you going to do to monitor that? This is what happens. The project starts today, for example, and you get 16 months into the project, and the prime contractor comes back to you and says, hey, the scope of work that we had designed for our DBE, we haven't used them yet, and we're not going to be able to meet that goal that we put in the project. How are you going to take care of, because they get points for that, and I think it's a matter of our responsibility as the Department of Transportation to actually monitor that throughout the project so that we don't get down to the last 5 months and they haven't used the DB. What are you guys doing to address that issue?
We actually keep real close tabs on the invoicing at the Seymour District to make sure that the DBE goals are being met.
So you're going to do that periodically throughout the project?
Yes, that's
So
correct.
if I came to you a year from now and said, hey, where are they at on their DBE goal, you'll be able to show me where
You
they're
could
at?
come to me and I will find out who we need to talk to
Okay.
figure that out, but yes, we
I
can find
appreciate
that
it.
out.
Thank you for your efforts in that area.
Director Dudas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whitney or Jim, on the point about the proposal coming in less than the 143, did anybody come below the 143?
No.
Nobody. Okay, thank you.
You're not saving any money this year, Jason. This is not the first time we've done the technical and scope proposal for best build projects. Is that correct? How many times have we done this? Is this the 3rd or 4th?
This is the 3rd, yes.
Has the scoring changed any over time, or is this the same scoring that's been used?
The scoring will be adjusted slightly based on the type of project. So where you have the scope is more important than, in this case, as the budget director asked, even though nobody came in below, we're actually getting additional paving that's beyond the scope of the original part of the project. So there's part of it that's being totally rebuilt, and part of it that we're getting additional scope work that's being done. What Whitney was saying is that there were 20 items, and not everyone put in all 20, but we're getting additional work done. So there's additional value there that we believe is built into the scope of the project.
I think, so therefore it'd be fair to say that the technical part, you know, and price has never been an overriding issue. It's been the scope and the technical part of it. And those teams never, ever talked during this process. You reiterated that during all three of these projects.
In the evaluation process, the technical scoring teams are in different rooms and evaluating totally separate from the scoping, or if we have a price proposal, and they're purposely not allowed to talk to each other, so that there's no information that's being passed from one team to another.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we go to Medicaid State Plan Amendment. Ms. Taylor? This is one of the easiest state plan amendment.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Appreciate it. Allison Taylor, Interim Medicaid Director for Indiana Family and Social Services Administration. I am here to report to you about a state plan amendment that our office is in the process of pursuing. There was language in the budget bill this past year that directed our agency to roll back 405, a section of administrative code that contained a 3% rate reduction for home health services. So this state plan amendment is a result of that statutory directive. Effective July 1st, we're seeking approval through CMS to remove that reference to the 3% rate reduction from our state plan. There is an impact to our agency. Notably, there's nothing in state fiscal year 2017, but then in 2018, we'll have a $3.7 million state share impact, and that's about a $7 million in federal. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
And even though it does stay a state budget impact, this was put in the Medicaid expenditure line item. It was appropriated for this change happening. So it really is no cost to our budget that we pass going forward.
Okay, okay.
Just a,
For those of us novice and new budget committee members or delegates, explain to me how there's no impact in 2017, but there's an impact in 2018, and then you say it has nothing to do with our budget.
because this effect will start with fiscal year 18.
Yeah, but that's
July 1st, 2017 is the start of the new fiscal year, and that's when the change will occur.
But isn't our budget for 2 years?
Yes.
So
So it's 18 and 19.
right, but 18 is part of our budget, right?
Yeah. And there will be a change in 18.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully there's
All
a
right,
handout.
the reason why I'm asking the question is because if I remember discussions during the budget session, I understand the first no impact, but 2018, you're gonna have a $7 million, well, let's just call it $10 million worth of
More
funding
services.
that will go away, right?
No, it means the state will, in Medicaid, will spend that because we're increasing rates by 3%. We're
So
we're
the state will-
eliminating the current 3% reduction.
All right, I'll leave that up to the accountant.
And we did put the money in the budget. The money is in the budget. Because the forecast that we got in April had the 3% reduction in it.
I understand that.
We added 3.7 million each year to pay for the elimination of it, to the forecast number.
Okay.
Clear as mud. Thank you, Allison. Next is Department of Education, Ms. Caitlin Beatson.
Good afternoon.
Obviously, I'm not Caitlin, but I have Caitlin with me. So, does that count? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Syverson. I'm the Chief Talent Officer for the Department of Education. I have with me Caitlin Beatson, who is one of our senior specialists in the department, in our Educator Effectiveness Department. And we are here to request your review of the Excellence in Performance Grant Award so that we may move forward with executing contracts for those schools.
Go ahead. Do you have
No, I mean, I've nothing further.
any questions on the, go ahead, Senator Kinley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it my understanding that you calculated these awards for these Title I focus and priority schools so that it somewhat mirrors the way we put the awards in the budget for the other schools with respect to how the teachers are to be recognized? And could you explain that just briefly as to how you followed that pattern?
Sure. So the award is actually only available for teachers rated highly effective in those schools, so it is limited.
Only highly effective.
That's correct.
Award.
That's right. And then obviously the formula cannot be the same, given that they're Title I focus and priority schools. Their pass rates on ISTEP are not what the other schools are receiving to generate the larger teacher performance grant, but we do limit it to highly effective, and it's used either as a retention incentive or for the exercising of a leadership role by one of those highly effective teachers.
Okay. And so as you hand these out to these teachers in these schools, do you have kind of a presentation prepared that shows them how you arrived at granting these awards and what the basis of their receipt of this was, so that they'll understand what the criteria are for, and other teachers will understand what the criteria are, so that they can hopefully be in a position to receive those kind of awards?
Yes, so the schools actually apply through a competitive process for the award, and so they determine themselves
Right.
how they're going to actually implement this plan. So
Okay.
they drafted the plan on their end, and
Okay.
then, will implement according to what they've submitted through their applications.
Okay, thank you.
Further question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the Department of Education, David C. Ford Scholarship. Ms. Dodson?
Good afternoon, Chairman Brown and members of the committee. I am Candace Dodson. I'm the Director of E-Learning for the Department of Education, and that's all things instructional technology. I wanted to thank all of you for continuing to support the integration of technology for learning in our schools through the continuation of the David C. Ford Fund. Annually, as part of our due diligence in addressing the needs of our schools and in meeting Indiana code, we have all of our school districts submit an Indiana Tech Plan, and this data we collect in March really gives us a true picture of the digital landscape in our schools. And I just wanted to share a very few data points with you for a moment. We know from the 2017 data that 76% of our districts are now one-to-one with devices per student at some level. That's a 9% increase over last year. That's 31 more districts that are one-to-one at every level than last year, and 32 that didn't have any one-to-one last year that now do. We also know that 89% of the districts operate on a fiber or a T1 wide area network, that there are 35% of our districts that have that one-to-one at some level, as I was saying, and 26% at most grade levels. So really we're seeing students living in that digital space. 89% of our districts report that our students have access to online courses. So it is definitely a new day in our classrooms, and to support that, the David C. Ford monies mean so much to all of our schools, not only in direct competitive grants, which we give out in 89% of the funds, funds, but then in the remaining percentages, we use to surround that journey of digital learning for our districts with lots of support in the areas of PD and leadership and capacity building and so forth. So today I am here to ask for the release of those funds. Sorry, hit your computer there. The release of those funds of the, so the Department of Ed requests the $3,086,072 funds that were appropriated in House Bill 1001 under the David C. Ford for fiscal year 2018.
Questions? Has the administrative costs under the Department of Education, have they stayed about the same, or have they changed over the past few years?
They had stayed the same for the whole time until this year. They were increased by $50,000, which we were very appreciative of.
Okay. And is that an internal decision made by the superintendent to increase those as the submission?
Her along with our, CFO and finance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Next, the Department of Education and State Library, Dr. Keller and Mr. Spear.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brown. I'm Dr. Keller with Indiana Department of Education.
Good afternoon. I'm Jacob Spear. I'm Director of the State Library.
And just coming before you today to request the release of the school and library internet connection funds for fiscal year 2018. I believe some additional information has been shared with the projected amounts that each school will be getting from this fund, and those are broken out by county and by school corporation. These monies that schools use to support their connectivity complement the federal funds that schools use to underwrite the large majority of their connectivity dollars. So we're appreciative of the increase that this funding line has received in this budget cycle, and know that the schools will, to support the learning that Ms. Dotson mentioned to you just a second ago, all of that runs on an infrastructure that is fueled by bandwidth.
And I'll just echo John's thank you for releasing these funds. These are critical for public libraries to be able to provide internet connectivity to Hoosiers for programming, job applications, career development, and e-government.
Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Ms. Bettel.
Thank you, Chairman Brown and the rest of the committee. I'm Elaine Beadle. I'm the president of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and we're before you today to kind of review the Carrier Corporation incentive package for retaining jobs. EDGE retention comes to you for review. We also use EDGE incentives to create jobs, and those are not brought here, but because of the retention and the uniqueness of this, your review is required. There is a packet of information you may have. In the first few slides, we'll kind of go through just to give you an overview and reminder of the history. In February of 2016, Carrier Corporation announced that they plan to relocate all their manufacturing operations to Mexico, and that would impact about 1,400 Hoosier jobs. On March 2016, then Governor Pence met with United Technologies president and the United Steelworkers Local 1999. During that meeting, United Technologies did indicate that they would assist displaced employees. They would maintain Carrier's residential headquarters and engineering operations in Indianapolis. They would maintain 300 corporate high-paying jobs. They would reimburse the incentives for the state that we had previously given them, which totaled $380,000. And likewise, they reimbursed the city of Indianapolis for their incentives of $1.2 million. In addition, severance packages were offered that included a nice education package. On December 1st, Carrier Corporation announced plans to keep their manufacturing operations in Indianapolis and committed to retain 1,069 jobs. 800 of those would be factory jobs and 300 would be engineering and headquarters staff. So that was going to be over 10 years, and they would also invest $16 million in their facility. So what we were proposing to them is an EDGE, which is the Economic Development for Growing Economy Retention. So up to $5 million in conditional tax credits based on them maintaining 1,069 jobs in Indianapolis. It's conditional, which means that if they don't maintain those jobs, they don't receive the incentive. If they ever fall below that over a 10-year period, we get all of our money back. So this is really something that will tie those jobs here in Indianapolis for the next 10 years. In addition to the EDGE for retention, we gave them skill enhancement funds up to $1 million. And again, these are also conditional. And what that does, it provides 50% of the cost of educating their employees or increasing their skill level. The last incentive was a Hoosier business investment. They would get up to $1 million. Again, it's all conditional that they invest the full $16 million in the plant here. So just for your information, we wanted to compare that for you to what we've done in past situations where we have presented EDGE for retention. And there have only been 5, we don't do this very often, between 2009 and 2016. Of those other 5, the average incentive per job was $10,050. For Carrier, the number is $6,548, or otherwise 35% below what we have normally done in the past. The average incentive per payroll dollar was 17.2 cents. For Carrier, we only gave them 10.2 cents, which again is 41% below the average. So if we do a cost-benefit analysis, as we always do for these types of things, with an average salary of $62,000 plus, the retained payroll of those 1,000 plus jobs is $66,705,600 per year. The federal taxes on that at an average of 25 was $16 million plus. The state taxes, which we're obviously interested in, is $2,154,590 per year. So our average incentive each of those 10 years is about $700,000. So we're having a return to the state of $1.4 million plus per year. So it obviously is a benefit to us that we were able to maintain those 1,069 jobs. We will continue to reap benefits from those jobs being here for at least 10 years and hopefully longer. You do have all of the documents that you might want to glance through at your leisure.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Talion.
Can you explain how, I see what you're doing here, but can you explain how you monitor this over the 10-year period?
Absolutely. They're required to report to us on an annual basis.
To IEDC each year?
Yes, in this case, Carrier Corp, the division that will be staying in Indianapolis, will have to report to us on a regular basis their number of employees, their wage, everything. Now, the concern you might have is that, well, what if on just that one day of reporting they have made their numbers? We have the right to go in and audit anytime during the year. So they're required to keep those jobs or more in Indianapolis for 10 years. Otherwise, we can claw back any monies, all the monies that we've given to them. So even in year 10, if they fall short, we get all of our money back.
All their money back? Not 10 years worth, just the 1 year?
No,
10
all
years.
10 years. This is meant to keep them ironclad in Indianapolis for 1,069 jobs for all 10 years.
All right, so this is for Carrier. Do you have this, you have a similar program for other companies here?
Well, we don't do retention very often. That's why I mentioned earlier, there have been 5 in between 2009 and 2016.
And have you ever done audits?
I can ask my general counsel, John Wong, on that.
I'm John Wong, General all of our incentives. So we have the EDGE, which is the job creation credit. We also have the SEP and also the HBI. For the EDGE, we do audits regularly, HBI as well, and then annual reporting is required every year. So we get detailed information, as Elaine said, of every single employee, their unique ID numbers, their average wages, what payroll they're contributing, what is the withholding benefit to the state. We get that on a yearly basis for every one of our incentives. We look at those in-house, but then if we see any outliers, we would audit. And in this case, if, just as Elaine said, if they ramp up as of the end of the year just to meet that deadline, reporting deadline, but then they cut a bunch of people the next day, we would be able to see who actually they terminated throughout the year, and we actually don't count those people at all. They have to stay for the entire calendar year in order to be incentivized. So we have a very detailed requirement for reporting, and we also do audit aggressively.
So you do audits every year?
Well, I mean, not for every single incentive. That would just be impossible since we're monitoring almost 3,000 of these incentive agreements. But we do them when necessary to basically have that deterrent factor out there that we are watching, that this is not free money. And that's what I want to really emphasize here. These are performance-based credits. There is no money going out the door right now to Carrier until they report to us and we verify that they've actually retained these jobs, done the investment they were promised, and trained the people and spent the money that for the training.
Well, I get the fact that they're performance-based. That's why I'm asking, how often do you have to do audits?
Yeah, I mean, how often? I would say, regular audits. I don't have a number for you to say how often we go out, but we are actively doing them.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Kenley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for this format that you used in presenting this. EDGE for retention is an unusual situation, and this is the clearest picture I've seen of an EDGE for retention tax credit explanation. So I appreciate you doing it this way, and I'd encourage you to continue to do that if we have that occur in the future. Thank
Okay.
you.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Senator Taylor.
Yes, I would agree with Senator Kenley. This is very clear on its face. But I have a couple questions about the presentation itself and then one about the EDGE. 1,069, does that include the jobs in Huntington?
No.
Okay, so there were jobs in Huntington that were lost, right?
Correct.
So, and then you've got 800, what I would call the more of the run of the manufacturing, and 300. Were the 300 professional jobs going to leave anyway? I never heard.
Well, they came back. The reason we did that, they said those would stay. But what we wanted to do is to tie them up so they have to leave them here for 10 years. So if any of those 300 jobs disappear, had we not included them in our package, they could have disappeared. So next week, next year, they could have had those 300 higher-paying jobs go away.
Okay.
By us tying them into this incentive, they have to maintain those 300 high-paying jobs here in Indianapolis for 10 years. Otherwise it jeopardizes everything.
Okay, because I never, from what I saw in all the announcements in Indianapolis, they were never going to leave anyway, the 300.
Right.
So I don't know if.
But we
and
felt
then-
it was important to tie them in for a 10-year commitment.
Okay, so just so I understand, and I think your CFO was explaining this, or your accountant was explaining this. Do they have to meet? How can they meet all three goals before they get anything? How can you meet a goal of retention, train? I mean, you could train somebody. I mean,
You
when
meet
we-
them separately, but they have to report all of it to us.
Okay, so what's the incentive on all three? Because this is the point I'm trying to make. If you get $5 million worth of EDGE, and those are tax credits,
Right?
so that takes a filing, right?
Right.
Which means you have to have income.
Right?
And if they have no income, they receive no credits.
Just to clarify, the EDGE for retention and any EDGE credit does not require income. It's a refundable tax credit.
But it's based on your income liability to the state of Indiana.
It's based on your withholdings that you generate
Okay.
for the state. So it's based on your payroll.
Oh, it's on your payroll?
Your
It's no
payroll,
longer,
there's a 3.1% tax.
right.
State income.
So it's not income, it's not income? It's not income, it's 3.1 of your payroll?
It's
Okay.
it's the withholdings that are generated as part of your income, your
Okay.
payroll.
Okay.
That's the benefit to the state. And then we give back a portion of that to the company in a refundable tax credit, regardless of whether you have a tax liability.
Oh, okay. Changed a little bit.
So that's EDGE. The HBI, you do have to have income.
Right.
You do have to have a tax liability for the HBI, which is the capital investment tax credit.
Right. So in other words, they only receive that with the funding, with the actual filing and having some liability to the state of Indiana as far as income.
Correct.
So that's easy. You don't have to audit that. So either they had income or they didn't.
Well, we would audit the fact that they
Their
put
tax
in a
return.
capital investment of $16 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the training grant, that's real simple too. Either the person was trained and they paid for it or not.
Right.
So my question is, when you're doing your audit, are you looking for all three before you provide any incentives? Or do you just have to meet one of them?
When you say provide them, so are you talking about when we award the credit?
Right.
Do we look for all three?
Right.
Yeah, we do. The business development team takes the company as a whole,
Okay.
looks at what they're going to do in terms of job creation or retention, looks at what kind of capital investment they're proposing to do, committing to do, and also what types of training they are providing for Hoosiers. And we take that as a whole and say, what is the net benefit to the state of all three of these pots of money? I'm sorry, not pots of money, but commitments by the company. And then how do we actually, do we want to incentivize these types of commitments? And we do a cost-benefit analysis. And there's sometimes when we don't incentivize because we don't think it's competitive.
Right.
We don't incentivize every single CapEx or job creation. We are very selective in what we do.
Last but not least, if the company just retains the 1,069 jobs, does no investment, provides no training, will they still receive the extra credits?
Yes.
Okay.
But
right,
only
just-
if they're here. We'll claw it back again if they don't keep it for 10 years.
Right, but
Meet
if
that
they keep them
requirement
all
for
for 10 years,
Right.
so they could meet one of the criteria for EDGE
Well-
and not the other two and still receive that $5 million. Okay.
Not-
Okay. That clarifies a lot for
Okay.
me. I just appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Next is the Northwest RDA, Sherry Ziller and Mr. Sheldrake.
Good afternoon, Chairman Brown and members of the State Budget Committee. My name is Sherry Ziller, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority. Mr. Bill Hanna, the President and CEO of the RDA, sends his apologies. He would have liked to have been here today, but he is currently out of the state. But joining me, I do have Bill Sheldrake. He's the financial advisor to the Northwest Indiana RDA and founder and president of Policy Analytics based in Indianapolis. And then we also have Chris Murphy, engineer from American Structure Point, and he's the engineer on many of the projects in front of you today. So we have submitted a list of 6 economic development projects for your review today. All of these projects have been approved by the RDA Board of Directors. These projects were submitted to the RDA and included under the prior strategic plan update. And I would just like to quickly give you an overview of the 6 projects before you today. Two of the projects are in the city of Gary. One is in the city of Hobart. Those three are road and access improvement projects to handle the increased truck traffic, matched with federal, state, and local dollars. We have a project in the city of Valparaiso, and that is an expansion project of their commuter bus service system to move workers to and from their jobs from Chicago, between Chicago and Valparaiso. We have a project in the town of Couts. That's a water and sewer project. And it links two trails together. And lastly, you'll see there's a transportation project, and that's aimed at moving NICD passengers to and from the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore and Market Park. So with that, we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have for us today. Thank you.
Senator Talion.
Now that I've gotten grief from every corner here, can you explain, because this one is new to me, this Couts Water and Sewer Infrastructure Project, is this a parcel of land in Couts? Is it within the town?
Yeah, it's currently a 63-acre parcel that they would be redeveloping to add for the infrastructure for additional sewer and water to link the two trails together. It's the Dunes Kankakee Trail and the American Discovery Trail system, and it's at, if you can visualize, State Road 49 and 680 South. Porter County, the county itself, would be acquiring the parcel, and they would be contributing about $445,000 for that.
Wait, so who owns the parcel, the town or the county?
The county.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have, let me make sure, agenda. There are reports that have been sent, and you have those that have been sent electronically to you. We have our agenda as outlined. Are there any further additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, I have a motion on the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda passes. Last item of business is the budget cycle is coming, biennial budget cycle is coming to a close, and chairmanship will change July 1st. If anything good happens, I'm still in control till the end of the fiscal year. If anything bad happens, it's all Jason's fault. But we'll entertain a motion for chairman July 1st. Senator Talion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank Jack Brown, who has done a lot of work for the last 2 years as chairman of the Budget Committee. For the last budget cycle, we've had some great trips, good cookies. So I just want to say thank you. And I've been asked to make a motion that Senator Kenley now be chair of the Budget Committee for the first 2 years, for the next 2 years. And I make that motion now.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
There is a second.
Director Dudich seconds. Any further nominations?
Besides me.
For vote of closing the nominations and a vote of acclamation, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator Kenley.
Do I have to put a time restriction on that motion?
I just want to say thank you to Budget Agency, to staff, to all the agencies that come before. I mean, very enjoyable. I think we learn a lot about the state of Indiana and how it works, and all the great areas, corners of the state that are working well together and being very dynamic. So appreciate all your effort and time into this, and has made my life much easier. So Senator Kenley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, I think, for the nomination and the second. Chairman Brown's done a great job the last 2 years, and it would be hard to imagine a better period of time for performance by the state of Indiana in terms of their budget activities. So I think he's escaping just at the right time in that regard. For the members' consideration, David and I have tried to look ahead, and we're looking at some dates and some possible locations to go to. We're considering August the 17th and 18th in northwest Indiana, and I think that one of the elements that we will want to take a look at up there will be probably the Gary School Corporation situation just generally, and then secondly, perhaps the double tracking initiative. On September 21st and 22nd, I think we'll try to go to Muncie, because we also have an issue with Muncie schools, and I think it's good for the Budget Committee to be involved in that, and that'll give us an opportunity to meet the new president of Ball State, who I think is going to be quite an asset for the state of Indiana generally. And so we'll take that, take a look at that. And then October 19th and the 20th, we're thinking of going down in the Crane Jasper area. We approved a kind of a locally driven road project down there where they're going to raise some funds, and then the Crane situation is always one that we need to keep tabs on. So if you have other suggestions or other thoughts or difficulties with those time frames, why, if you would talk to Jason or talk to David or talk to me, why, let us know what your thoughts are. And in addition, those three areas, we kind of looked over the areas of the state where we had been and hadn't been over the recent years, and it looked like maybe it was about time to visit those areas. So with that, I want to thank Tim Brown one more time. I think he's done not only an excellent job over the past 2 years in managing many of our issues that we deal with in the Budget Committee, but I thought this year's budget, Tim, was really an excellent budget, and you were the author of that bill, and so we want to thank you for all your service to the state of Indiana in that regard, and just kind of recognize among those of us who watch those things more closely and are somewhat more expert at evaluating that. So thanks again for your great job.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. You know, it is a labor of a lot of people, so appreciate that I'm just one small part of that. And one of the things I've been saying, and there are a couple of us around this table may be able to say that, I look to the neighbors to the west. I'm certainly glad I moved in 1982 away from there, because they are now in year 3 without a budget. It just boggles my mind, you know, how they can function, you know, not paying for social services, not paying their hospital bills, not paying their electric bills, those sorts of basic things. Just makes a huge difference. So appreciate all the hard work that you'll talk about how that happens, how you can do that. We are adjourned.